Hilchos Shar Avos Hatumos Perek Shishi, the laws of the remaining primary sources of impurity, chapter 6. Every chapter, every 2 chapters, 3 chapters, some of their topic. So what's today? Today we're going to be talking about Avodah Zarah. This is a rabbinic type of impurity. Okay, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that idols are impure. It says they're forbidden to worship, it says that they're forbidden to have any benefit from them. But here we're going to learn that the sages said, in order to get people away, keep your distance from Avodah Zarah, they said that if you touch it, it makes you impure. So let's see the details of this. It says the Rambam Halacha Aleph. Tumas Avodah Zarah midivrei sofrim. The impurity of idols are rabbinic. V'yesh la remez min haTorah. But there's a hint. If you look carefully in the Torah, you will find a hint for this. And what is the hint? This is the story of Yaakov Avinu. After Shechem was attacked, and Yaakov's family was going to move away from the area. So he was worried that some of his family had some spoils from Shechem that were idolatrous. So what does he tell them? See the beginning of the verse here? Yaakov told his household, and everybody was with him. And here the Rambam quotes the verse, Hasiru es Elohei hanechar asher b'seichechem. Remove the strange gods that are with you. Vihi taharu. That's the key word here. And become pure. V'hachalifu, and switch. Sim leseichem is the next word. Switch your clothes. So what does this mean? That there's an element of purification that's required from strange gods. When you have strange gods, there's a little bit of an impurity that devolves upon you. By the way, if you look in the sources for this in the Talmud, there's many different verses that are brought, not this one. And the Rambam brings this unusual verse. The Rabbi once explained, there's 2 ways to look at Avodah Zarah. What's the problem with this, or why did they make this impurity of the idol worship? So one is, we call in the yeshivish language, Gavra and Chefza. Gavra means it's on the person, Chefza means it's on the object. One way of looking at it is there's something problematic with the object. And therefore we want to consider it to be impure. The other way is it's the person. We want to create a distance between you and the idols. So we make an impurity that's mostly imposed on you. So most of the other sources that are brought for this concept imply that it's the problem in the object. The Avodah Zarah is the issue. It is inherently impure. But the Rambam, halachically speaking, says no. It's on the Gavra, it's on the person. Hasiru. You see what Yaakov said? Yaakov didn't say the idols are a problem. Remove them. You get away from them. You people get away from them. And the Rebbe says a very interesting reason why. Because the whole concept of Avodah Zarah really only exists in the person. There's nothing inherently idolatrous about a stone or a tree. The person makes up in his head that he wants to consider it to be an idol. So it's just your imagination. So in terms of impurity, it's about getting you to stay away from it.
Imagination, it's a symbol. It's a symbol. You make a thing symbol.
Fine, but it's not inherently in the object, right? Like chametz on Pesach, the chametz is the problem. The other things, they themselves become an object of prohibition. Avodah Zarah is only because a person decided in his head that it's going to be an idol. Therefore, you as a Jew have to stay away from it. At least allegorically, the Rebbe said this is also a hint to why Hashem made idols in the world in the first place. Why did He make such a concept that there should be idols? So the Rebbe says because Hashem wants that we should create that distance. We should have the, so to speak, the free choice or the option to use our head to give significance to fake things. And then we do no. Hasiru, we remove that. We change perspective. We go towards the real thing. Anyway, that's the Tumah of Avodah Zarah. And specifically the Rambam says, Arba Avos Hatumos Yeshba. There are actually 4 categories within idol worship that are considered to be a primary source of rabbinic impurity. Avodah Zarah Atzma. So we'll look over here. The actual statue, or whatever, I'm picking a statue, but it's just the object of the idol. Umesham Sheha. It's accessories. That means utensils that are used in service of the idol. I just put pots and pans, but it could be anything. It could be a stick, it could be a chair, it could be whatever utensil is serving the idol. V'tikroives shala, any food that's offered to it. V'yayin shenisnasech, any wine that's libated, I guess, right? That's poured to it. V'tumas kulam midivreim. Understand that it's all rabbinic, but when the rabbis imposed it, they did it to the highest level. Av hatuma, primary source of impurity. Says that I'm a malacha beis. What is the status of an av hatuma? So we know the trademark of an av hatuma is that it can pass on impurity to people and utensils. If it's second degree impurity, it loses that power. So because it's a rabbinic avatuma, avodah zara atzma, the actual idol itself, mitama adam v'kelim b'maga, transmits impurity to people and utensils by contact. Uklicheres ba'avir. Here, let's use this chart to compare. Okay, just lining up all the things we're learning about so far. You have an animal carcass, a bird carcass, a sheretz, zera's semen yesterday, and here's idols. So idols are like a sheretz, as you can see. They transmit impurity through contact and through airspace to pottery utensils. The eina mitama b'masa, but not by carrying. Kasheretz, just like an idol, just like a rodent. Shenemar, because the Torah actually, in talking about idols in a different context, not impurity, it says, shaket teshaktenu. You shall treat it like an insect, like a sheket, like a disgusting insect. So there's already a link there between avodah zarah and sheretz, so the impurity imposed is the same. The shi'ura kazayis, and the amount here is an olive-sized portion. That is not like a sheretz, right? A sheretz is adasha, a lentil size. Why is it different? If we're comparing it to a sheretz, why not make it so strict, right? Because a smaller size means stricter. It makes you impure faster. Says the Rambam, the rabbis can't be that strict. This idol worship impurity, which is only rabbinic, cannot be more stringent than a dead body. A dead body itself only transmits impurity with an olive-sized portion, so avodah zarah also has to be a kazayas. What if somebody makes a star of Buddha necklace and makes it into an idol? It's not a kazayas. So if you touch it, you're not going to become impure. Funny enough. Oh, here it is. But if the idol itself, the form, the image, is less than a kazayas in sar, it's pure. Halacha gimel kotzatz ever mimena. If you cut off a limb from an idol, right, they used to have these massive statues. So you cut off a limb from this dog, let's say. Afilu haya kimardeya, even if it was as big as a mardeya. Now a mardeya, we had this before in the laws of impurity. It was something like this. It was like a big pole, and it was meant to use as direction in plowing. It's called the mardeya. And it's a big thing. So imagine it was like a massive statue. They cut off a massive hand. So you think it's many, many kazayases. Right? It should make you impure. It says the Rambam harezat toher. Actually, it's pure. There's no tumah there. The halacha is, idols do not make you impure just by limbs. Only when it's a complete form. Shanemar, how do we know this? Because it says in the pasuk, Tizreim kemoi dava. Throw them away or distance yourself from them like a woman who is a nida, who's menstruating. Ma dava ina mitama le'ivarim. What do we learn about a nida? In the last set of laws, only her entire being makes you impure. Not just a limb. So also idols only full, not by limbs. And the Rambam explains that basically, if you look at it all in big picture, you're going to see they gave it as many leniencies as they could of primary sources of impurity. They never gave it extra stringencies. In every detail, they went to the lenient one. Because it's only rabbinic impurity. They went leniently one way. They made it like a sheretz, that there's no tumah of carrying. They made it like a dead person who needs to have an olive-sized portion, not a lentil-sized portion. And they went with nida, where there's no limb impurity. So they just picked and chose the lenient type of impurity. Halacha dalet. Nisparka avodah zarah. What if, it's a little different, okay? So in the last case, you actually cut off a limb from an idol. Here, the idol to begin with was assembled from multiple pieces. And then it came apart. Even though a regular person, it's like Lego, it's so simple, anybody can put it back together. Because everything is in place, all the limbs, so to speak, are there. As long as you don't reassemble it, doesn't make you impure. Because it's still considered to be a part or a limb of an idol, and there's no tumah for limbs. Halacha, hey, let's now move to the next category. Kol meshamshei avodah zarah. What about utensils that are used, or accessories that are used in service of the idol? So, kisheretz. They follow the impurity of a sheretz as well. This column here. Mitamin adam v'kelim b'maga u'klicheres ba'avir. They transmit impurity to people and utensils by touching, and to pottery by going in their airspace. Ve'enan mitamin b'masa. No tuma through carrying. V'shir tumason b'kazayis. But like the idol itself, they don't follow the size of a sheretz. They follow the size of a dead body, which is a kazayis. And here, though, it's different than the idol. Even if you take the accessories, let's say there's pots and pans, and you cut off a piece of it, that's the size of a kazayis, metame kesheretz, now it still makes you impure like a sheretz. Here we have a stringency in the accessory of an idol more than the idol itself. Ubeis avodah zara, the idol worship house. Yeah, they used to have these massive temples or chveisvas that they would put in the idols. Avanav ve'etza va'afarei metamin b'kazayis b'maga kechala meshamshin. Listen to this. The stones, the wood, the dirt of this structure all make you impure if they're kazayis in size, if you contact them like any accessory. So accessories is not just like the things that you actually use to serve the idol. Anything which is dedicated to serving the idol, like even if it's a home or a structure, becomes meshamshin and makes you impure. Halacha vav. Some more details in this law of the structure of avodah zara. If you enter your head and most of your body into a structure meant for idol worship, even if somehow you didn't touch the structure, just your head and your body went into the airspace, nitma kinegea, you become impure like you touched it. You take a pottery utensil and you bring in its airspace, meaning you just kind of bring its opening into the temple, so to speak. Nitma, it becomes impure. Safsalim v'katedrois, benches and katedra is like a big chair. These nice big chairs. Shehichnis ruban lebeis avodah zara, you put in the majority of them into the temple, the idol worship structure. Tmeim, they become impure. V'kulan rishon l'tuma. All of these things are considered to be at the level of rishon, because if you get impure from an av, you go down one level, and now it's rishon l'tuma. Let's go even further now. Halacha zayin tikrei bes avodah zara, the offering. Okay, we're expanding the chart now. One more column here. Something that you offer to idols is even worse than the idol itself as well. Mitama b'maga uvemasa. It makes you impure through contact and through carrying. Kinevela, like a animal carcass over here. B'shiura b'kazayis, but the amount is the same, the olive size portion. Called makrivin la, anything that you actually offer to it. Bein basar, bein sharech l'numashkim, whether it's meat or other food or drinks. Hakol kinevela, it's all like a carcass. Why? Shahakasuv kran zivchei mesim. This is in Tehillim. The Torah calls them sacrifices of the dead. This is the Jews when they were in the desert. They served Baal Peor and they ate zivchei mesim. So, what's a dead sacrifice? A nevela, a dead animal, right? So the avodah zara is like a dead animal. Even though, if you can remember so far back in the Rambam's first book, in the section of law and idols. So what did we say? That when it comes to deriving benefit, there's no way to cancel it. Once something's been offered to an idol, you can't say, oh, now I don't care about it anymore. If it's been offered, it's done. It can never be permitted again for benefit. Nevertheless, im batla, if it did become nullified, and the commentaries say, meaning if the idol to which it was offered became nullified, you canceled the significance of the idol. Hence, whatever was offered to it is meaningless. Harezu safik letuma. It's still a doubt with regards to impurity. We don't know if that cancels the impurity, and therefore, out of doubt, you have to be stringent. Aval klishu tikrei b'savodah zara. But if it was a utensil that was offered to an idol, how do you offer a utensil to an idol? So the Talmud says there was certain idols that the way that they used to serve them was that you would bring a stick, crack the stick in front of it, and throw it in front of the idol. So it becomes an offering. You offered this broken stick to the idol. Shabitlai. So if you then go and cancel, nullify the significance of that offering, tahar, now it's pure. Because we find a concept of a utensil becoming pure in general. You put an impure pot in the mikveh, what happens to it? It becomes pure. So in this case, the breaking or the lack of significance that you're attaching to it makes it pure. Something an idol itself or its accessories, if you nullify them, they become pure because they're no longer a avodah zara. But offering is the most stringent one; it can never really become nullified. Halacha ches, yayin shenisnasich la'avodah zara, wine, yayin nesech. So not a food, it's more of a special wine that was offered. It's also in the category of offering, but it's wine. Metame adam v'kelim b'maga u'klicheres ba'avir u'metame adam b'masa. So also a stringent thing. It transmits impurity to people and utensils with touching, pottery with airspace, and people with carrying. Kinevela, like a carcass. V'tumasi b'kezayis, same thing. Olive size portion is the impurity. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk in Ha'azinu, asher chelev zevachema yoichelu, yishtu yein nesicham. It's making fun of the goyim, the idol worshippers. They offer these food and drink to the idols. So Hashem says, those idols who eat the fats of your offering and who drink the water of your libations, yakumu v'yazruchem. Let them get up and help you. That's the literal context of the verse. But what does it say over here? Torah puts together Torah puts together the wine that they offer to the fat of their offerings. So it's the same thing. Same way the offering food is like an avela for impurity, so to the yayin nesach is the same thing. But here, for this impurity, you have to have what's called the maximum level of yayin nesach. It's actually by hand. A goy took the wine and poured it for an idol. Avos stam yenam shel goyim. But what's called stam yenam means by default wine of idol worshippers. The Rambam in the first book said that since we don't know, so we assume that idol worshippers are always making their wine dedicated to idols. But that's only for forbidding the eating of it, the consumption of it. But for impurity, metame tumakala, it only makes you impure at the lighter level. Kishar kol mashkin tmein, like any other impure liquid, which as we're going to learn later, is called a vlad hatuma. It's a lower level of impurity, not like yayin nesach. Yayin nesach, in this case, for the impurity of yayin nesach, you have to have actually poured. Okay, here, the concept of avodah zarah kind of closes, and now the Rambam basically summarizes a bunch of rules of impurity that we come away with based on everything we've learned from the beginning of the book till now. And the reason that he does this is because tomorrow we're moving into a new section of these laws, rabbinic impositions of impurity. So we have to know and kind of summarize everything we know till now to move on properly. It says the Rambam Malacha Tes, Mikol advarim shebe'arnu mitchilas hasefer ad kan. Very unique language here. From everything we've explained, from the beginning of the book till here, ata lamet, you have learned a couple of rules. First of all, sha'avois hatumos, that when it comes to describing primary sources of impurity, mehem avos shel Torah, umehem avos shel divrei seifrim. First of all, you have certain biblical ones and rabbinic ones. That's A. So here's what you have to know about this. Let us take a look at this. We learned that there's avi avos hatuma. It's like the grandfather of impurity. It's only a dead body. That's like the highest, worst level, okay? Typically we start from here. Av hatuma. You're either a primary source of impurity or you're what's called the vlad hatuma, a child source of impurity. In child, you have different levels. First degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, okay? So since there's two types of av hatumas, biblical and rabbinic, so the Rambam says, V'chala mitame machmas av shel Torah, anybody or anything which contracts impurity from a biblical av, harehu vlad tuma shel Torah. He becomes a biblical vlad, a biblical next degree. If you become impure from a rabbinic av, you are impure at vlad level only rabbinically. So just remember that. Here's another rule. Yud Aleph. Kol av tuma shu mitame b'maga ve'einu mitame b'masa. Any av tuma, any father level, which makes you impure by touching but not by carrying, bein av shel Torah, bein av shel divrei seifrim, whether it's rabbinic or biblical, if the Torah splits up contact from carrying, then you can automatically know another rule. Adam hanoi geyaboy, a person who is touching it, eine mitame begadim b'shas magoy, he will not become a conductor for impurity. Whatever he's touching, while he's touching it, will not become impure. V'loy adam v'loy klicheres, neither people, neither pottery utensils, afal pisha adayin loy pedash mimatamav, even though he hasn't let go of his impurity. Okay? So like, this is not a good example because an avela is mitame through carrying, but let's say there was a thing over here that wasn't mitame through carrying. So then, if you're touching while you're touching, it doesn't go through you. But both after he separates or before he separates, he's always considered to be a vlad, lower level impurity, in which case he will pass on his impurity to food, make them second degree because he's rishon, right? If you're touching an av, you become a rishon. If you touch food, they become a sheni. But you don't become a conductor to any people or utensils. Whereas, halacha yud beis, if you're a type of avatuma which transmits impurity through contact and through carrying, bein avshal Torah, bein avshal divrei, whether it's a rabbinic or biblical, so then adam hanegea boy oy hanoisai, a person who is touching it or is carrying it, metame begadim b'shas magay b'shas nesiyasai, whatever he's touching while he's touching it, or whatever he's touching while he's carrying it, becomes impure. Ve'oisa oisan rishain letuma, and he makes them like himself. He's a conductor. He becomes a rishain, they become a rishain. Or if he touches food, they become a rishain as long as he didn't separate from his original source of impurity. Once he separates from the source of impurity, he becomes a rishon fully, without being able to make clothing impure. And if he touches food, they become a sheni. Now, when do we say this? In all other cases of an av, with two exceptions. The one actually on the screen, the nevela, and a thing that a zav rides on. Those we learned have a difference between touching and carrying. You're only a conductor when you carry, not when you touch. Aval hanavela b'hamerkav, carcass and amerkav, afal pishei metamim b'mago uvemasa, even though they will make you impure through touching and through carrying. And egeya einem metamim b'gadim b'shas magoy. If you're just touching them, you don't make your clothing or other things impure while you're still touching it. You touch food, it's like you're disconnected. They only become second degree. Whereas if you carry them, you will make your clothing impure while you're carrying it. If you will touch food, again, before you separate it, in this case of carrying an avela, you will make them into a rishon, as we explained. So basically you have three categories. If something to begin with is only metame b'maga, then you never become a conductor. If something is metame b'maga uvemasa, then you always become a conductor, both when you touch and when you carry. If you're in the middle there, nevela and merkav, they're metame, maga and masa, but they're only becoming a conductor when you carry, not when you touch. Halacha yud gimel mei chatas sheyesh bahem kedei hazaya. The sprinkling waters, yeah? Para aduma waters, and there's enough water to do a sprinkling act with it. Afal pi shehein. Ki nevelo ki merkav, even though impurity-wise, they're like a nevela and a merkav, which is she'ein metame begadim ela hanoisam, that you only become a conductor if you're carrying them. Even when you're only touching them, you still become a conductor to other things on account of being a carrier. It's impossible to touch water without moving them, causing them to move. Even from the outside. You hold a cup of liquid, the water is moving. And when you cause something to move, we already explained that moving something is like carrying it. So not because this is different in the sense that touching it becomes a conductor, but that when you're touching it, you're by default carrying it, so automatically you become a conductor of impurity, and whatever you're wearing also becomes impure. Same thing if you're touching the wool of a carcass, or the strings coming out of a merkav, out of a saddle, let's say. Automatically you make things impure, even if you're only touching them, because you're carrying them. It's impossible to touch wool without causing it to move, to touch strings without causing it to move. Therefore, like a carrier, you will make your clothes impure as long as you haven't yet separated from your source of impurity. Special law in chapter 3, we learned. A dead bird carcass does not make you impure through touching, only when it's in your throat, when you're actually in the middle of swallowing it. So the Rambam says, "Bishas b'li yasai metame begadim kamesha b'yarnu." While you're in the middle of swallowing, whatever you're touching becomes impure. V'heim rishon l'tuma, like you, your first degree impurity. V'cheinim naga ba'ichlei nadeim rishon l'tuma. Same if you touch food while you're swallowing, in that moment, it becomes a rishon. V'achar shabala harei zeh pedash mimetamav. After you swallowed it, that's called disconnecting. Even though it's in your system, but it's called balua, it has no impure status. Tesvav hasoyreif para aduma, the people that are involved in the burning of the para aduma. Useirim hanisrafim, and the people that are involved in the burning of the goats. Certain communal goats were burnt outside the temple. The hamashaleach hasoyer la'azazel, and this guy who's pushing off the goat on Yom Kippur from the mountain, the Azazel goat. Afal pisha b'shas ma'aseir mitamim begadim, even though as Torah dictates, during the act, during their procedure, they will communicate impurity to whatever they're wearing. As we explained, nevertheless, im nagu ba'ichlin afilu b'shas ma'aseyem hareihem sheni l'tuma. For food, there's an exception. They touch food, they're like second degree impurity, not like first degree impurity, because there's a very fundamental difference between these guys and other people. Here, the reason Torah says they make their clothing impure is not because they're involved in something or touching something impure. They're just doing a certain act which Torah deems impure. Therefore, we don't take it so stringently to food. If you're touching impurity, then we're going to transfer your impurity to food as well. Halacha tezayin, hanegeya ba'av me'avois hatumos hamushlach b'soich hamikveh. Today, if somebody saw this in the mikveh, you wouldn't use the mikveh again. But let's say you walk into the mikveh and you see a dead animal. There's an avela in there, yeah? Or some kind of impure utensil. So, the question now is a mikveh an inherently pure place? Or are these things still impure?
The mikveh, it seems that's not...
Is a mikveh makom tahor? Is a mikveh a pure place? So the Rambam says, if you touch an avatuma in the mikveh, a dead carcass of an animal or a dead sheretz, dead mouse, okay, in the mikveh.
The whole thing becomes impure.
The whole mikveh becomes impure. Let's see. So he says, v'nagaboy, if you touched it while you're trying to immerse in the mikveh, hareza tameh. So you actually become impure. In other words, even though, here's the point, even though a mikveh is able to make you pure, it's not able to save you from becoming impure. Shanemar, yeah, while you're in it. Because it says, Ach mayan uver, mikveh mayim, any stream, any pit where there's water gathered, yiyeh tohar, it will be pure, v'negeya benivlasam yitma. But if you touch the carcass of the rodents, that's the context of the verse, you become impure. But the rabbis basically said that you have to read it as one concept. A mikveh will be pure, but even if you're in the mikveh and you touch the nevela, you're going to become impure. Even when they're in the mikveh, they're going to make you impure. But funny enough, once you then dip in the mikveh and leave the mikveh, you'll be good. Right? Because you touched it in the mikveh, but then you went to the mikveh. So, right away you're good. If there's a pure, let's say a pure mat, okay, in the mikveh, and a zav comes and steps on it, or stands on it, it becomes impure. Once the mat or whatever will leave the mikveh, it will become pure. Also tvila, because the immersion counts for it. But what's the novelty here? The novelty here is that while you're in the mikveh, you're actually still impure. And the ramifications would be while you're still there. Yeah. Exactly. The person, let's say, touching the impure mat while it's in the mikveh, if he were to put his hand out and touch something or someone outside the mikveh, he would make them impure, because in that moment he's impure. Needless to say, he makes clothing and food and drink impure, which is a massive novelty, and all the commentaries discuss it. The Rebbe has letters on this. Why? It's clear here that just sitting in a mikveh doesn't make you pure. You have to leave the mikveh to become pure. At least in service of God, I think it's a very big lesson. Some people think, as long as I went into the holy mikveh, as long as I came into a holy place, I'm good. No, you got to leave. You got to leave, go out to the world. It's like Noach, yeah? Hashem told him, go into the teva, but then he said, say mina teva. Who needs a commandment? I mean, if you're living in a boat for a year, don't you want to get out? I mean, what's Hashem saying? Say mina teva. Because that's the whole thing. You think that the world is over, you think that you're in a teva and you're good, you're protected, you got to go out. Only when you go out do you achieve full purity.